Okay, that's working. Now, let me just see if I can get this.
And while you get set up, I'll read your bio real quick.
Oh, thank
you. All right, great. Dr. Ray Batchelor, since 2011, has worked with Tim Flynn, founder of Queer Tango London. And as an academic at Bucks University in England, he co-authored a study in the embodiment of leadership of queer tango as a means by which managers reflect on leadership, and with Melanie Paris developed Deaf Can Dance, is that?
Deaf Can Dance.
Deaf Can Dance with tango as a route into music for deaf people. He may bring queer tango into football coaching.
He will. He got the funding for it
All
just
right,
recently.
great. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What I want to show you, I dance. I absolutely, I love it. But I have a very deep and narrow interest in dancing, and it's the Argentinian tango. And before I go into it, I just want to show, well, I want to show that which is useful. That which does not address procreation or be informed by it had neither home nor law, and no name. It was simultaneously denied and silenced. It not only did not exist, it must not exist. And sometimes, already in its weakest manifestations, there were negotiations, there were discussions looking to eliminate it. So keep that in your mind for a moment. And now we go here.
Yep.
The world's first sound film, literally the world's first sound film. That was the sound that was being played. That was what happened. And the thing that I'm wrestling with. Whoops. Let's go back to. Go away. Right. The thing I'm wrestling with is. Okay. The contributors to the Wikipedia entry for Queer Tango assert the Queer Tango movement, which revives the origins of tango as a same-sex couple dance, is very recent. It was founded in Germany, in Hamburg, where in 2001 they had a festival. And essentially, queer tango, you could argue about it, and we can do some of the ifsy-butsy stuff in a minute. But it starts then, and it's spread around the world, and there's queer tango, I don't know where, everywhere. There's Queer Tango London, I'm part of that. If that is so, or some kind of truth, then what sort of history does it have? And that's what I'm sort of looking at. Wikipedia, bless it, has this page called The History of the Queer Tango Movement. Job done. I don't have to do anything. But it's the really, really strange. It has one very interesting quotation from Christine Denniston, which I'm not going to read now. I'm going to read it later for reasons that you'll see. And then a strange discussion about these slightly saucy European postcards of women dancing together, saying these have been created in order to titillate men, and they're really nothing much to do with tango at all. That's the history of queer tango? I don't think so. I think quite possibly there may be more to it than that. So, queer tango history, the issues. What is it? That one keeps coming up. How far back should we be going if we're thinking about this? How queer is it? We'll get to that. What types of data, what things might be considered, what things oughtn't to be considered? Who can help us in thinking about this? And what next? So what is queer tango? What definitions are there? Should these inform what we do in constructing, and that may be the wrong word, but in exploring histories? Queer tango is defined by different groups of interested people. It's defined by those who set out to prescribe, by publishing manifestos as to how it should be done. So Mariano de Campo, who runs Tango Queer in Buenos Aires, is absolutely famous for doing this, and has a very interesting manifesto which specifically cites queer theory as one of the platforms as to why the dancing will be done in this particular way. But that's not the only way. Another way is that it is defined without language, without representation, by the people who dance it. And they do it all around the world. And I don't know what the consequence of that is, but I believe it to be true. It's defined by those inside queer tango who use language and make representations of it, by those outside queer tango as above, or some messy collisions of all of those. So on my Facebook page this morning there was a new announcement, and the iconography is interesting. Do you do men? Do you do women? Do you do a woman leading a man? Do you do a man leading a woman? All of those things are tied up with how this thing is getting represented. There we go. Let's have some more Wikipedia. Queer tango is to dance Argentine tango without regard to the traditional heteronormative roles of the dancers, and often to exchange the leader and follower roles. Therefore, it is related to open role or same-sex tango. The queer tango movement permits not only an access to tango for the LGBT community, but also supports female leaders and male followers, regardless of orientation. So they're sort of starting to get somewhere. There are little bickery things that are happening with people saying, I don't approve of this. Why aren't we explicitly referring to sexual orientation? Disingenuous, said that speaker. Andriana Pegora, who's a very interesting dancer, and who was doing something in Brighton in 2013. A queer perspective frees tango from the restrictions of heteronormative, gender-specific structures and representations. It values instead its capability to accomplish an emancipated dialogue. So I'm just not settling on which ones are right or wrong. I know I have my own one. It's in my head. It's no better or worse than anybody else's, but this is the one that I believe to be true. Queer tango is the gender-blind dancing of more or less authentic Argentinian tango by those who acknowledge something of the social and political significances of doing so. And then these are the things it's characterized by, but not confined to. Same-gender couples, certainly. Safe spaces for LGBT dancers, a very 20th century model of what all this stuff might be about. Women leading, men following, and role reversal within dances. So the business of intercambio, where you dance with someone, and in the course of the dance, you exchange roles. This is actually something that's pretty much peculiar to queer tango, and one of the things that marks it out. I've listened to people bickering about what it is, and this is where this list comes from. These are the things they seem to refer to in trying to decide whether something is queer tango or not. Implicitly, a dancing tango couple is more securely classified as queer tango to the extent that, and I don't believe this, but these are the criteria that are applied. The sexual orientations of the dancers correspond to LGBT norms. Conventional gender roles are challenged because both dancers are of the same gender, or, as here, conventional gender roles are reversed. Those dancing believe they are dancing queer tango. That gets me off the hook because I don't have to say what queer tango is. And then the dancing occurs in an overtly queer tango context. And then lastly, what they dance corresponds to the observer, the judge's view of what queer tango is, which is another get-out. So, if that's so, what might be the consequences for constructing histories? How far back? I think what we've got to do is have that cut-off point at 2001. And we have a prehistory and a history. I've made it a bit of a slash because actually that 2001 doesn't work. There was same-sex dancing in Buenos Aires in the 1990s. Tango Mujer performed in New York in 1996. Are we 5 minutes? Jesus, okay, sorry. Yeah, right. So when we get to the historical stuff, this is how you could do it. You could apply those things before 2001, and you could apply the other ones afterwards. How queer is it? It's a bit queer, and it does sometimes refer to queer theory. I think that those of you who are familiar with queer theory, the great possibility here is that instead of having those LGBT norms, you're free of them. You're free of them. And you can start to look dispassionately at whatever the data might be and allow much more that people might be doing and thinking and feeling things where you're not looking for a gay man, you're not looking for a lesbian, you're looking for people who are dancing that may have something to do with this. What types of data? Maybe. At least it transgresses in the sense that it's two men embracing one another. So there's something there. An impressionistic view. There's lots of photographs, photographic evidence. Often, I'm a shameless user of the web, and I appreciate its limitations. This is in a hill fort in Montevideo in the 1890s. Is it this? What are they doing? What do they think they're doing? These are the questions that come to mind as we see these things. And there are any amount of other ones. A rural festival with men dancing together. Another one, I'm going to do these quite fast. There's Maurice Chevalier, smiling away in 1913. Height of tango mania, men dancing together. This is just a bit of a comic romp. Is this relevant? This one, which I would love to do an entire presentation about. Yves Lavalier and Spinelli, with Jean Richepin, former lover of Sarah Bernhardt, in a potboiler play that he did called Le Tango, where one of them drags up. So it's two women dancing together on stage all the time. This one is one of the best, and I'll just spend a little time on this, really a little time. I only got this 3 days ago. It was from a contact in Chicago. He found it in his grandfather's goods. And here it is. It's in rural Uruguay in the 1920s. And he hadn't noticed before, but I'm doing this project about queer tango in football. And they're footballers. They are footballers dancing together. What are they doing? Okay? I'm just offering these as questions. I don't have answers to them. This famous one, 1926, they're doing it in the street. That stuff. Yeah, we looked at that stuff. More of that stuff. Hollywood. I've got 90 seconds. Just him. He's interesting. But this is when you're coming at tango through the lyricists or through the singers. He never married, big inverted commas. Carlos Gardel. Fascinating stuff on YouTube. People who are speaking about the middle of the 20th century. How am I doing? Okay, right. And who can help us? There are people who've done stuff. This is interesting. That was her quote. It's the whole business about how in Argentina and Uruguay, the population at the turn of the last century had about 7 men to 1 woman, and many of those women were professional women who were operating the sex industry, which reduced the number of marriageable women. And so inevitably, in some way or another, men are going to dance with one another, aren't they? Why? And in which circumstances? And again, what do they think they're doing? Sorry, there's too much in this, really. This was a great book until page 132, when he actually, instead of talking about dancing tango, talked about the lyrics. So the embodied stuff was all lost. I got cross with him. This is really pretty good. This is interesting, provocative, but I think, for my purposes, flawed because of the focus on post-colonial and stuff. But this is a fantastic find. Magli Saikin, written in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. Sorry, I'm going to learn. But it got translated into German, and I speak German, and I read it. And it's fantastic, because she has done the research. She's done the work. She's got the data, and what she's looked at is criminology and psychiatry, where gay men and lesbians crop up because they're a problem, they're a subject. And there's all sorts of stuff coming out there. And she absolutely demonstrates, to my satisfaction, that while tango was in its savage state, so happening in the street, in the brothels or whatever, they didn't really care about the sexual orientation of the people doing it. They didn't really care about who did what with who. And then it gets sort of nicely, neatly going into the salon, and do you know, it all gets eradicated. It's just ruthlessly stripped out. So that by the time you talk to the men who are in the YouTube clips, they say, oh, we weren't dancing together, we were practicing. Yeah, I should cocoa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being under time.
Oh, good.
By a few seconds.